Hi everybody, it's Julie Hoffman, and I want to thank you so much for being here on this webinar. This is all about how to do rent to own for home buyers. So thank you so much for being here. You're either here live or you are here watching this recording. Either way, I want to welcome you and hope that you learn a lot about rent to own for home buyers. So we're just going to talk about a bunch of things today, but I want to go over with you why somebody might want to use rent to own to buy their home these days, some of the reasons why people are not able to become homeowners, and definite strategies on how to become a homeowner using rent to own, and some real life examples on how it might affect your life. So I'm really excited to get into all of this information. So let's get started. All right, first things first. Again, my name is Julie Hoffman. If you don't already know me, I've been investing in real estate since 2001. I've transacted over $80 million in real estate, and I've done over 300 deals since 2001. Now, during the recession, like a lot of folks, we got hit pretty hard through our real estate investment portfolio. In fact, we ended up losing almost everything. We actually went from being multi-millionaire, excuse me, I can't speak tonight. Being multi-millionaires to experiencing multiple foreclosures and eventual bankruptcy. And I know it sounds awful. It was. It absolutely does. But it was also a gift. And I actually feel that having gone through the recession, having survived the recession, was actually my biggest advantage, because what it did is it helped me become extremely street smart when it comes to real estate investment. And actually since then, my husband and I have been able to rebuild another multi-million-dollar real estate investment portfolio with great cash flow, all without any of our own money and without qualifying for a single loan. And 90% of these deals have been through doing this very strategy called rent to own, including buying our very own home here in Kelowna. So I'm just going to share with you a couple more stories about kind of how this all came about, and maybe why you might want to listen to me. So this is Jesse Jackson, one of my favorite quotes of all time, especially when it comes to coaching, because in addition to rebuilding a multi-million-dollar real estate investment portfolio, I've also become a real estate investment coach. And anything that I coach my students on, so I coach people one-on-one, and I have online real estate investment training, anything I coach my students on are techniques and strategies that I've actually done and that I actually continue to do. So I firmly believe that you can't teach what you don't know, and you cannot lead where you won't or don't go. So I've been in all of these places. If you're here watching this webinar today because you're wanting to get into home ownership, but you've been told no, or maybe you've been through a bankruptcy, or maybe you have damaged credit, or for whatever reason, I have likely been in your shoes at one time or another. So I just want to emphasize that. In case you're wondering, well, why is she putting on this rent-to-own training that I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about later? You'll know why, hopefully, after the end of this webinar. So again, is this you? Are you somebody who's tired of paying rent, tired of dealing with your landlord? Or are you basically concerned that you might never get into home ownership? Maybe you've got credit issues, you don't have enough down payments saved, maybe you're new to Canada, or maybe you're just being affected by the new lending rules that have happened in Canada recently. It is becoming harder and harder for people to become homeowners. I think everybody knows that right about now. And are you feeling discouraged? And this is what really got me, when I decided to choose rent to own for me and my family. Are you worried that you might have to move your family because your landlord is going to sell your house and you're renting right now? We have an example of how that worked really well for a family coming up. So just to back up, back in the heyday, I've done, as I told you, hundreds of deals. And between 2005 and 2008, we were in a heyday. We were making millions of dollars, doing many, many, many deals, and life was good. Everything was going really, really well, and things were going so well, in fact, I found my dream home, and we bought it. It was a $1 million home just outside of Beaumont, Alberta. 5 acres, 10-foot ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, hardwood flooring, wraparound porch. It was 3,500 square feet. It was just one of the most beautiful homes I'd ever seen. I couldn't believe sometimes that it actually had become my home. And we were so happy there. But what ended up happening is the recession. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So during my living in my dream home, an investor had called me, and he kind of gotten himself into trouble. He lived 3 hours away from the property. This property actually happened to be inside the town of Beaumont. So I live 5 miles out of town in my dream home, and this house was just 5 miles away from me. But it was 3 hours away from David, who had just taken a real estate investment seminar, and he had gotten in a little bit over his head. He had done a rent-to-own course, but it was actually taught by an American trainer who doesn't know the ins and outs of doing rent-to-owns and lease options and agreements for sale, basically creative real estate. He didn't know how to teach it in a Canadian way. So anyway, David just made a few mistakes. He put too much money down. He called me and he said, I put $21,000 down on this house. I've been carrying it vacant for 8 months. I need help. Can you help me? And I said, you know what? I think I can help you. So what ended up happening is I took over the house for him, but not before I found Christine and Mark. Christine and Mark were people looking to get into home ownership, but they'd been turned down by the bank. They had $15,000 to put down, but they were self-employed. They made good money, but they didn't pay themselves enough, because a lot of times what people will do when they're self-employed is they'll take advantage of tax advantages for business owners. So what that means is sometimes they won't pay themselves very much so that they can save money on taxes, which is all well and good until you go to get financing at the bank. The bank needs to see that you consistently pay yourself a lot of money, or that you make a lot of money. So they had kind of shot themselves in the foot. But I marketed this property from David out into the world. I think it was on Kijiji that Christine and Mark found me, and they said, we like this house, we'll take it if we can do a rent to own. So we put it all together. They gave me $15,000 and they moved into the house, and I was able to take over David's basically problem, and he didn't have to worry about carrying a vacant house anymore. Now, I didn't give him any money. I didn't put any money down. I said, I'll take it over once I have a solution. And that's exactly what happened. So I made $15,000 on this house, and Christine and Mark were able to become homeowners. They didn't have to qualify for financing. All they had to do was give me a $15,000 down payment, and they were able to move in. But 2 years later, unfortunately, they got divorced. Now, by then, we were deep, deep, deep into the recession. And as I told you before, my husband and I had moved into $1 million home, and we're just starting to get into really, really unfortunate, stressful financial times with our $1 million home. We were basically in over our heads, along with our whole real estate portfolio, which had basically turned upside down. And I was about to lose my dream home. So as a mother, by the way, I have 5 children, and I was dealing with all of this stress. I was in this big house that it was getting less and less affordable for me to keep, and I was just really, really fearful. So this happened at a time that my tenant buyers, Christine and Mark, they needed to move out. So actually, Christine called me and she said, what am I going to do? We're getting divorced. Are you going to sue me? I said, no, I'm not going to sue you, but I'm not giving back your $15,000 down payment. And she said, I don't care. I just need to move on. And I said, fine, move on. So they did. And my husband and I were faced with somewhat of a difficult decision. There was not going to be a better time for us to downsize in the way that we needed to without having to qualify for financing, because our real estate troubles were already starting to affect our credit. There was never a better time for us to make, at the time was a very difficult decision, but we made the decision, and it was a great one. And that was to downsize, that's right, into this little blue house in Beaumont. So what we were able to do, we did a little bit of renovations to the house, which we were easily able to cover because Christine and Mark had given me a $15,000 down payment, and the house had cash flowed very, very well during the time that they were there. Went in, did some renovations, and we moved my family, my big family, into this little house, and we fit just fine, and it worked out really, really well. And what we were able to do is move on, still be homeowners, because I had this house as a rent to own. It was still my house from David. still have this house as a rent to own. I was able to move my family into this house and have certainty around where I was going to be. I didn't have to go into a rental situation. It was just a very, very smart way to downsize. So we were very happy in this little rent to own. Now, fast forward about, I would say 18 months later, I had an opportunity to move to Kelowna because I had a job offer there. And my husband and I were still working through the real estate portfolio challenges. But I had this opportunity. Now, we had gone through such stressful times, of course, having to downsize and having to deal with all the business stuff that was going on right in the thick of the recession, that I said to myself, I'd love to move to Kelowna, but I'm not moving there if I can't be a homeowner. So we came out to Kelowna, looked around at houses, looked around at rent-to-own opportunities, and we ended up finding this house, which was actually a foreclosure. And we ended up getting a great deal on it. We actually put an offer on this house because we knew we were getting such a great deal. It was a foreclosure. Now, it needed a little bit of work, but it really was a dream home for us because it had everything that we needed. It was close to schools. It was in a beautiful setting. It was big enough. It was about 3 times the size of our little blue house back in Beaumont. And we couldn't be more excited. And we put an offer on the house, even though we had, really no business doing that, because we hadn't repaired our credit to a point where we could get financing. We were still dealing with major business challenges. So this is how I felt. Although I had put an offer on basically my new dream home in my dream city, Kelowna. I mean, I always loved Kelowna, but I never actually felt I'd ever be able to live there. And us being able to move to Kelowna was actually a great way to just get a fresh start. Whenever a person goes through a major business collapse like what we did, it's just nice to be able to start over someplace new. But at the same time, these were my feelings. Although I had a great offer on a great house that I definitely wanted, I felt discouraged. I felt disappointed in myself. I felt very, very fearful because I didn't know how we were ever going to get this house. I really, really didn't. And my husband, who has always just been a great supporter of mine, he just looked at me and he said, don't worry. You know what? You're going to figure it out, because I had done hundreds of deals. And I had figured out lots of creative ways to do real estate. And he just believed in me. He said, don't worry, honey, you're going to figure it out. So I did. One night after, it didn't take long. I just woke up. I just kind of darted out of bed, and I figured out how we could buy the house. What I needed to do is I needed to make this house that I was going to buy into a business opportunity, into an investment opportunity for somebody else. So I put together all of these numbers on how much money I could offer an investor in order for them to buy me the house. And then the plan was for me to rent to own the house back to the investor, and it worked. So I basically sat down with an investor. I offered him this opportunity, and I explained, you buy me the house, I'll buy it back from you, and I'll pay you a profit. I'll pay you cash flow along the way as well. And the investor said yes. His name was Dale, and actually a buddy of his named Richie. And Dale and Richie helped me buy my house in Kelowna. And by the way, I still live in this house today. I live in my dream house because I was able to basically make a deal for somebody so that it would make sense for them. And by the way, the rent-to-own training that we have coming up in Kelowna, April 7th, 8th, and 9th, is going to cover exactly what I did in order to be able to buy the house that I still live in today. Now, remember, I still have my little blue house in Kelowna. So I got a deal. I was able to get my house in Kelowna. We had the offer ready. We had financing approved. We had a possession date. But I still had my little blue house in Beaumont, and I needed to sell it. But the thing is about what was going on in Beaumont is we were in a very, very soft market. So if I was going to sell this house on the MLS, I was going to lose money on a prepayment penalty. I was also going to lose money on equity, and I just couldn't afford to lose money, and I didn't want to lose money. So what I ended up doing is I marketed it again as a rent-to-own, and I found Paul. So Paul and his wife and his 3 cute little kids, were very interested in doing a rent to own because they had been renters for the past 5 or 6 years in Edmonton. They were tired of big city life in Beaumont, by the way. It's about a 15,000 person city right now, but when we lived there, it was only about 8,000 people. So Paul wanted to move to a smaller town. Paul wanted quieter streets for his family. And most of all, Paul wanted to get away from his landlord. He could not stand his landlord. Landlord didn't do work, didn't compensate him for when he did work on the house. And the last thing he wanted to do was, even though he didn't want to be a renter to his landlord anymore, he didn't want to be a renter to any landlord anymore. So Paul found this house. Again, I marketed it on Kijiji. He said, I want this house. I know that this house is going to be a perfect fit for me and my family. And the reason why he couldn't qualify for financing is because he was self-employed. And again, he didn't pay himself enough. So he figured out what he needed to do over the course of the next 3 years. He put $5,000 down. He moved into the house. He did a bunch of renovations to the house. He replaced the windows. He replaced the roof. He treated it like his own. And at the end of 3 years, he was able to declare enough income. He had a good proof of down payment, and he even repaired his credit substantially. So he was able to buy this house. And it was so awesome because I didn't have to lose money. In fact, I ended up making even more money. Eventually, David was completely paid off. And he never had, he's the investor, remember, that I talked about way back. He was all taken care of. And Paul, even though the market was soft when he moved into the house, well, guess what happened in Edmonton? And guess what is happening in the Okanagan, Lower Mainland right now? Well, the market had a major surge in the Edmonton area, in the Beaumont area. So when Paul went to buy the house, what happened was he walked in to $30,000 in equity. And that was really cool. He felt so, he felt smart that he had taken action this way, that he had taken the initiative. And I felt so good about selling him this house and giving him the equity that, of course, he deserved, because you know what? He took action. Now, I know what you might be thinking, okay, well, you're Julie Hoffman, you're the Street Smart Diva, you've done hundreds and hundreds of deals. So it's easy for you to say, but maybe it's not necessarily easy for me, somebody who's never done anything like this before, to do a rent to own. Well, let me tell you this, that's why this kind of training is in place. I wouldn't know how to do these types of strategies had I not taken training. I've taken 2 rent-to-own courses that were both 3 days each, and they were both, by the way, $5,000 US for each course that I took. And I also took multiple other types of training in order to learn how to do creative real estate really well here in Canada. So that's the only piece that is missing. Yes, I also took lots and lots of action. So I was, I'm probably a little bit more ahead of the game, or a lot more ahead of the game than a lot of folks out there. But really, all you need is education and the willingness to take action, because all you need, if you want to buy a house this way, all you need is one opportunity or one investor. It's really that simple. I guarantee you, if I can do this, you can do this as well. So I had all of these results, but I want to share with you some other folks who have been able to use rent to own with this strategy in order to become homeowners. So this is Christine and Glenn. I know I have 2 Christines in my examples, but it's just kind of a coincidence. Anyway, they were tenants and very happy as tenants. But what had happened 5 years leading up to this opportunity is they had a daughter who had some health problems. So 5 years prior, she needed to spend a lot of time in the hospital. Christine, her mom, ended up basically quitting her job and running their daughter back and forth from Kamloops to the Lower Mainland for treatment. So they finally got her health issues under control. They had done a complete renovation to the house in order to make sure that their rental property was a healthy environment for their daughter. And then guess what happened? Their landlord decided that she wanted to sell the house. So of course, Christine and Glenn said, well, we want to buy the house. We have a down payment. All we need to do is get financing. Well, unfortunately, since Christine had quit her job, they didn't have enough proven income in order to buy this house. So they got turned down at the bank, and they thought that they were facing basically eviction, that they were going to have to move. So their mortgage broker called me because he knew that I did rent to own. And he said, can you help these people? So what ended up happening is I helped them find an investor, and they were able to still put $15,000 down. They were able to stay in the house that they wanted to stay in. They didn't want to move into another house and start over and risk putting their daughter into another potentially dangerous situation, like literally for her health. They were able to stay where they are, and now they are fully on track to being able to qualify for the financing because mom's back at work. They've got a dual income. They're going to have strong enough income in order to get financing at the end of the day. So this is a huge success story. This is Nadine, another young lady who she had looked at 30 properties, and she fell in love with this house. She said, this is the house. It's right across the street from my son. She's a single mom. It's got a basement suite, so I can rent that out, and I can help with my mortgage payments. Put the offer on the house, only to guess what? That's right. She got turned down for financing. Only this time it was because she had a couple of credit scars 5 years prior. So the bank was not willing to lend her the money in order to buy this house. So of course she's completely discouraged. The mortgage broker was discouraged. The realtor was discouraged, and the seller, of course, was discouraged. So they phoned me, and I helped Nadine find an investor to buy her house for her, and she did a rent to own back. And things have gone so well. She's got all of her credit issues straightened out. She has saved even more for a down payment, and she is on track to purchase this house actually probably in the next 120 days. And let me tell you about this house. This house is actually in the Okanagan. And the Okanagan has experienced in the last 18 months a huge surge in the real estate market. So when Nadine goes to close on this house, and I'm not joking you, she's going to be walking into $100,000 of equity in this home, in her home. And it's just going to feel so good when we finally get the financing for her. So this was a win for Nadine, and it was a totally workable solution. And there is a huge demand for rent to own, especially in British Columbia and the interior, as well as the lower mainland. Prices are going up and up and up. And now that the lending rules have changed, people with good credit, decent incomes, and strong down payments are still getting squeezed out of the market because of the new income requirements. So demand has never been higher in British Columbia. And this webinar is really for the folks who are local. And I'm so excited to tell you about the training that we have coming up, because this is something that's going to be very, very accessible to all of you. So the main reasons people aren't being able to get financing is because down payments, sometimes credit scars. Again, sometimes people are self-employed. A lot of people, more and more people are new to Canada. So if you are new to Canada, then you have an established Canadian credit. And this is what I am told is becoming the biggest obstacle, because basically people need to be able to prove that they can make a lot more money in order to afford financing. And I've been told by a couple of mortgage brokers now that they don't want to promote rent to own to their clients because they can't do anything about their income. They say things like, no, they've got enough a down payment, that's not the problem. They've got decent credit, it's mostly an income thing. And you know what, my clients can't do anything about their income. Well, you know what? I disagree. I absolutely disagree. I think anybody can do something about their income, especially if they're given enough time to do that. And that's, again, where this rent to own training comes in handy, because what it does is it also helps you create a way to create extra income. Yes, you can just take this course and buy your own house, and maybe get a part-time job, or maybe continue to ask your boss for a raise, or maybe you're in school and you complete school and then you get a higher paying job because you've got further education. Whatever your strategy is, it's fine. But I guarantee you, this rent to own training is a way for you to create more income. So it's one of the many ways that I am financially independent and able to do what I want when I want as a real estate investor. And another example is This is John Simcoe. He's also a real estate investor, just like I am. He used to be a architect, and he also worked in Fort McMurray as, he drove big trucks, and he had a high paying job, but was always very interested in real estate investment. And he took a rent to own course, and then he took massive action. And he was actually able, through rent to own and through rent to own real estate investment, to quit his high, we're talking like $150,000 to $200,000 a year job. He was able to quit that job and to do rent to own full time because he fully replaced his income. So don't just take my word for it, or even John's word for it. Rent to own can have a substantial effect on your income. This is another example of Kelly Fry, who took this rent to own training. It's called Rent to Own Done Right, that I'm about to tell you more about shortly here. After taking this rent to own course, Kelly Fry, who is a local real estate investor and realtor in the Lower Mainland, she made $65,000 on her first deal after taking this rent to own training. So if you think you can't affect your income, I strongly disagree, because you absolutely can. And this course will help you to do that. So what it is called Rent to Own Done Right. It is hosted by the Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group. I'm one of the founders of the Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group. The training is April 7th, 8th, and 9th, coming up here right in Kelowna. Again, it's called Rent to Own Done Right. It is 3 days of intensive training to show you exactly how to do rent to own, whether you want to do it as an investor, or maybe you are a real estate professional who wants to have another tool in their tool belt. By the way, backing up to Kelly, she has zero competition as a realtor doing rent to own, and it's a major part of the type of real estate sales that she does. But especially if you are somebody who is looking to become a homeowner, this is an amazing way for you to get into the home that you want now without having to qualify for financing, and the ability to pick the house that you want. You will be able to learn step by step exactly how to do this. So again, this will help you get the home that you want today. It'll also, if you do a 3-year deal or a 5-year deal, it's going to give you the time that you need in order to correct whatever it is that you need to, whether you need to increase your income, or you need to save more for a down payment, or maybe you need to, if you have a couple of credit scores that need to be corrected. You're going to learn how to put a rent to own together, how to find investors in order to help you find a house for yourself, how to do a presentation so that you don't waste a lot of time trying to find the right person to work with. You're going to get the exact paperwork that is needed in order to be able to do rent to own the right way, and in order to be able to make sure that you do qualify for financing at the end of a 3-year term or a 5-year term. And you're also going to have hands-on ways to create increased income. So I gave you the example of John Simcoe, who was able to quit his $150,000 to $200,000 a year job, all by switching to rent to own real estate investment. And Kelly Fry, I mean, she made $65,000 in her first deal after taking this training. Well, on another webinar that we're going to be doing, and you'll get notified about this, Ross Lytle, who is the trainer for this rent to own training, fantastic guy who's actually been doing rent to own in Canada since 1983. He's going to be able to show you how you can literally create an extra $10,000 per month by doing 2 deals per year. So if the income issue is what you're worried about, then this definitely is the course for you. So again, is this you? Are you tired of being a tenant? Are you worried about getting squeezed out of the market? Do you have some credit scars? Are you self-employed and you're not necessarily paying yourself enough? You've been turned down at the bank. Are you feeling discouraged, or are you worried about getting basically evicted from your house? Well, this is a solution. This is a definite solution if you're wanting to get into the homeowner market sooner rather than later. So again, you're going to be able to get the house that you want. This will create a huge amount of security for you and your family. If you've given somebody a down payment to get into rent to own house, you're going to have motivation in order to make the deal work. If you're already living in the house, it's going to become yours through your own financing in 3 to 5 years, you're going to have the motivation to make sure that you do the work that's needed in order for you to get there. You're going to have hands-on guidance along the way, and you're going to have proven ways basically to increase your income. Most importantly is the paperwork that comes along with it, because just like the lending rules have just recently changed, so has the paperwork that comes along with this course, because things have changed. And now the paperwork needs to be different in order to help people make sure that they get financing at the end of the term. So if you are looking to get into home ownership and you don't feel like you are going to be able to do that in the near future, but you want to, please join us April 7th, 8th, and 9th for the Rent to Own Done Right training. Now I need to tell you a little bit about also this training. Of course, it's in Kelowna, so hopefully this is very accessible to you. Now there is of course an investment involved with a price basically for the course. So we want to make this as accessible as possible to people. So the price of the course is $19.97, and that's for 2 tickets. So, you know, if you're a husband and wife, you both need to come and learn how to do this strategy. But if you're maybe just half of a husband and wife team or a partnership team, or however you need to do this, we also have single ticket options. So don't let the 2-for-1 and the $19.97 be an obstacle for you. We also have single ticket options, and we have lots of folks who are coming who are taking advantage of the single ticket option. So there is a link in the description somewhere around here that you can go directly to get registered, because the course is coming up and we are not going to be taking any other registrations after this coming Wednesday. So if home ownership is something that you see in your future, and I've given you many, many examples of exactly how people have been able to do this in the past and increase their income. I mean, it's just so many wins when it comes to this type of training. Please take advantage of this offer, because again, it's only going to be around until Wednesday. We have to close registration. We have to get ready for all of the people that are coming to this course. We've got people coming from Alberta. We have people coming from all the way from Saskatchewan. We have people coming from the Lower Mainland. And we have a whole bunch of people coming from right here in Kelowna. So please join us and make home ownership a reality for yourself through Rent to Own. I want to thank you so much for being here. Again, the link is somewhere around here in this post. Hopefully you don't have to search for it, but click on the link. It'll take you directly to the sales page. You can take action immediately, and I hope to see you April 7th, 8th, and 9th right here in Kelowna. Also, if you're traveling from out of town, we're hosting it at the Best Western Plus, again, right here in Kelowna. There's a fantastic room deal for people traveling from out of town. Meals are included. It's just going to be as affordable and accessible for you as absolutely possible. So please don't delay. We look forward to seeing you here. Click on the link in the description. Click on the link in this webpage on this webinar, and we will see you April 7th, 8th, and 9th in Kelowna. I look so forward to seeing each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being on this webinar, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.